Imagine carrying a secret for over 60 years. Not out of shame, not out of fear, but simply because the world wasn't ready to hear it. Yet 91 years old, Sophia Loren, a woman who has outlasted empires, outlived legends, and outshone nearly every star Hollywood ever manufactured, sat down and said something she had never said before. About a man most people have half forgotten. A man whose talent burned so intensely it eventually consumed him. His name was George Peppard. And what Sophia said about him, it changes the way you see both of them forever. Stay with me, because this story goes far deeper than Hollywood gossip. This is about two extraordinary human beings, the invisible wounds of fame, and what it truly costs to chase greatness in a world that only rewards the surface of things. Before we go any further, if you love stories about the real lives behind the legends, hit that like button right now, subscribe so you never miss one of these, and drop a comment below telling me, did you know who George Peppard was before today? I want to hear from you. Now, let's go back to the beginning. To understand why Sophia Loren's words carry such extraordinary weight, you first have to understand where she came from. She was not handed glamour. She was not born into comfort. Sophia Loren entered this world on September 20th, 1934, in Rome, Italy, and grew up in Pozzuoli, a struggling town outside Naples where poverty wasn't a talking point. It was simply Tuesday. World War II carved itself into her childhood. She knew hunger. She knew the sound of air raid sirens. She knew what it felt like to have almost nothing and still find reasons to keep moving forward. That early suffering didn't break her. It built her. It gave her something that no acting coach, no studio contract, no amount of money could manufacture, an unshakable understanding of human pain. T15, she entered a local beauty competition. It was there that film producer Carlo Ponti spotted her. He didn't just see a pretty face. He saw intelligence, fire, and something rare, a presence that made a room reorganize itself around her. What followed was one of cinema's great love stories, complicated and controversial by the standards of the era. Ponti was older, already married, and Italy's laws made their path together extraordinarily difficult. But they found a way. They always found a way. They eventually married in France in 1966 and remained devoted partners until Ponti's death in 2007. More than 5 decades of genuine partnership. In Hollywood, that alone is almost miraculous. By the late 1950s, Sophia Loren wasn't just famous. She was a phenomenon. She had starred alongside Cary Grant, Frank Sinatra, and Clark Gable. She had conquered Italian cinema before most American stars had even heard her name. And then in 1961, she did something that had never been done before and arguably has never been equaled since. She won the Academy Award for Best Actress for her role in Two Women, performing entirely in Italian. A foreign language film. A devastatingly raw portrait of a mother protecting her daughter during wartime. The Academy, not exactly known for embracing the unconventional, had no choice but to recognize genius when it stared them down. She was the first performer in history to win an Oscar for a non-English language performance. Let that sink in. Here was a woman from a bombed-out Italian town who grew up without enough food, holding the most coveted prize in world cinema. And she wasn't done. Not even close. Decades of extraordinary work followed. Collaborations with Marcello Mastroianni that crackled with wit and warmth. Later performances, including her deeply moving role in The Life Ahead in 2020, directed by her own son Eduardo, proving that at nearly 90 years old, the fire had never gone out. Now here's where the story takes its unexpected turn. George Peppard. Say that name to a younger audience today and you might get a blank stare. Say it to someone who grew up in the 1980s and they'll probably picture Hannibal Smith from the A-Team, cigar in hand, grinning as another plan came together. But in the early 1960s, George Peppard was something else entirely. He was it. His role in Breakfast at Tiffany's alongside Audrey Hepburn had made him one of the most talked-about leading men in the business. Handsome, intense, classically trained, he had every ingredient for a career that could have placed him alongside Brando and Newman in the pantheon of American acting greatness. Oh, what happened? That, it turns out, is precisely what Sophia Loren has been thinking about for decades. In her later years, Sophia has reflected openly on her encounters with Peppard during Hollywood's golden corridor of the early 60s, when their professional worlds briefly and memorably overlapped. Her observations are not cruel. They are something more interesting than that. They are compassionate and clear-eyed in equal measure. She has described Peppard as a man of genuine intelligence and artistic seriousness, someone who wanted, more than almost anything, to be respected for the depth of his work rather than the architecture of his face. He read, he thought, he questioned. He was, by multiple accounts, uncomfortable with the performance of celebrity, the smiling, the glad-handing, the strategic humility that keeps studio doors open. That discomfort, Sophia suggests, was both his greatest quality and his most costly flaw. Hollywood in that era, and perhaps in every era, rewards a very particular kind of flexibility. The willingness to play the game while appearing not to. Peppard, by most accounts, refused to bend in the ways the industry quietly demanded. His conflicts with studios were real. His reputation for being difficult was real. And the opportunities that quietly stopped arriving, those were real too. Sophia's reflection cuts to something profound. Talent alone has never been enough. The film industry is as much a social ecosystem as an artistic one, and George Peppard, for all his gifts, struggled to navigate the invisible rules that governed it. What makes Sophia's perspective so valuable is that she saw past the armor. She has spoken of a Peppard that the public rarely encountered, someone gentle between takes, curious about ideas, genuinely searching for meaning in a world that kept offering him surfaces. A man whose personal struggles, including well-documented battles with alcohol, seemed to trace directly back to that same restless, truth-seeking intensity that made him magnetic on screen. He wanted everything to be real, everything to be honest, in an industry built on beautiful illusions. That collision was always going to leave marks, and Sophia, who herself clawed her way up from genuine hardship to genuine greatness, understood something that perhaps not everyone around Peppard did, the difference between strength that endures and strength that isolates. She endured. She bent without breaking. She found warmth in the struggle rather than fury at it. Peppard, she suggests with evident sadness, never quite found that balance. In 91, Sophia Loren is one of the last living links to a Hollywood that no longer exists. Every time she speaks, we get something irreplaceable, the unfiltered memory of someone who was actually there, who actually knew these people not as legends but as human beings with contradictions and fears and unfinished business. Her words about George Peppard aren't an epitaph. They're an act of recognition. A way of saying, this man mattered, his struggle was real, and he deserved better than the silence that followed. Perhaps that's the most honest thing one icon can offer another. Not applause. Not myth. Just the simple, generous truth. You were enough. If this story moved you the way it moved me, please take a second to like this video and share it with someone who loves classic cinema and the real stories behind it. Subscribe so you don't miss our next deep dive into the lives of the legends who shaped our world. And I really want to know, leave a comment below. What do you think George Peppard's legacy truly is? And what does Sophia Loren mean to you? These stories only stay alive if we keep telling them. So let's keep telling them, together.